There's been some questions asked about what I've said recently, and Mr. Rennick, who claims to be a senator, what I said about him. What I said about Mr. Rennick is simply he's not a senator. Why? The Constitution says every senator and every member of the House of Representatives shall, before taking his seat, make and subscribe before the Governor General or some person authorised by him an oath or affirmation of allegiance in the form set forth in the schedule to this Constitution. That's clear. Alright? That's clear, very clear. So until you do that, Senator, as you claim, you are not one. Our Constitution says. It does say, however, until the Parliament otherwise prescribes. But for reasons I've said already, we don't have a lawful federal parliament, nor have we. Now, the problems we have is all people like Rob Sudi produced the book Free Man's Delusion. To be a free man in this country at this time is a delusion. So his book, in some parts, is correct in what he's trying to say. The rest is nonsense, which is fine. The delusion in this country, the absolute delusion being forced on the people, is that somehow the political parties which are registered with ABN numbers and they pass laws as a government when they're only a parliament, they take control of everything in this country, and if you don't do what they say, they have a penalty system which penalises you, like for refusing a breath test, when you don't have to give anything to them unless you have been committing an offence or there is other evidence that shows that the level of alcohol in your system affects the way you drive, i.e. you're wandering, whatever. Or in the case of other things, when you don't give your name. Why should you give your name to a public officer? He's not an officer of the Crown. The problem is the political parties put up policies, and the delusion is that they somehow are going to abide by them, but they never do. They lie, they cheat, and they steal off the people. They collect huge amounts of money for wages when they're not entitled to get them. You can't change that if you're not lawful, and you're not lawful, and you don't want to know that. So, Mr. Rennick, I'm not attacking you or your credibility as a person. I'm attacking actually what you said, the Constitution. You're not interested in that, and you're not interested in the oath of allegiance. So, you're not interested in representing the people, because we set that requirement by our Constitution. The High Court said it's the highest authority in the country, second to the people, of course. The supreme, absolute, and uncontrollable authority remains with us, the people. So your political parties that claim some form of power have none. Authority is, if they were lawfully appointed, and they're not, to form a government. Now, everybody's running around, you've got to do this, you've got to do that on voting day. What everybody needs to do is get a piece of paper and write on the top of it, I and your name have come here to vote in a lawful election. There is not one person here who is lawful. So I can't vote. I am prepared to vote, but I can't. And sign it. That's all you put. That's all you have to put. Because if you do sign it, you become part of the problem, not the solution, for the reasons I'm about to explain to you. The Constitution is clear. To create the Australia Act, they needed a referendum. They didn't, so none of that's applicable. And if you think that's incorrect, then show where the referendum was. Show what Margaret Thatcher said when she said, I want to see the results of the referendum in Australia from the people, saying they approve it. Never got it. Didn't happen because it didn't happen to us. We got nothing. You know, the whole problem is, if the politicians would stop thinking they're little gods, Mr. Rennick has a lot of good ideas. So does Pauline Hanson, so is her underling, whatever, and the other particular politicians have good ideas, but they're not there lawfully. They have to be selected to become part of a pool, both for state and federal elections, under the governors of the states, for the following reasons. From that pool, we vote for one person once for the lower house, one person once for the upper house. Some people say, oh, that's nonsense, they can do what they like. I refuse to vote in this corruption. Yeah, well, this is what I'm talking about. I'm not telling you to vote, Max. I'm telling you to write a letter refusing to vote because it's corrupt. And that is a reason for not voting, because the whole system is wrong. You cannot vote in that election lawfully. The Electoral Act is nonsense. The Electoral Commission is corruption at its worst and treason on the people. It's setting up a system whereby the political parties control your vote. How? You've got multiple choices. When did that come in? The Labor Party put it in, or good old Billy Hughes, William Hughes, the Prime Minister in 1907, introduced preferential voting, conscription, and then tried to knock out the statute of monopolies, which is what he was trying to create, which prohibited what he was doing. Now, you don't trust the police, I get that, nor do I. Listen, this is not about trusting police. This is about forcing the system under our Constitution. The fact that all the politicians are sitting there in Parliament, they know that there is a moratorium restricting the printing of the names of the pedophiles, makes them pedophiles. When they do not abide by our law, Albanese can't propose anything. He's not the Prime Minister. He's just a liar and a fraud on this country. Somebody just put something on Facebook, my wife showed me, and it's just typical of them trying to force it so they get their garbage through and people will vote for them because my daddy voted for Labor or my daddy voted for Liberal or Nationals or Greens. Try not voting for any of them because they're not lawful. The Constitution is clear. The Governor of the state selects a group of people and you vote for one person each for each house of the state parliament. And that person that you vote in represents the whole state. Because the Boundaries Act doesn't apply. Read Clause 8, states that. Under Clause 8 we're a self-governing colony of England. Like it or lump it, here we are. All the lies in the world are not going to take that out or change that in any way, shape or form. Now, at federal level, then I take you to HCA 39 and 1915. Sir Samuel Griffiths, one of the people who wrote the Constitution, he said at paragraph 148 and continued on, here you find 106 binds the state constitution and all laws made pursuant to it to the overriding authority of the Commonwealth Constitution. And then he says it's beyond the legislative authority for any parliament of a state to pass a law that contravenes the federal law made pursuant to the Constitution. So all these plenary powers spoken of by Anne Toomey and others, they don't exist the way you say. The High Court's already ruled where the plenary comes in. It's in control of the legislature, which doesn't, no one has control. They have the right to look at and pass any act put to it for deliberation by the executive. There is no such thing as a cabinet. You say there is, you're a liar and a fraud on this country. There's no such office of Prime Minister. That title was given to the Speaker. And the big problem is, the Speaker, if there's a Primary Minister, that's him. At state level, the Speaker is at state level. Do they have authority? No. The highest authority in the state parliament is the Governor. Don't like it? the letters patent for the office of Governor states that. The letters patent, which by the way is reciprocal, it keeps continuing, for the office of Governor General, is the same. He is the highest authority in the Parliament. Like it or lump it, that's him. He signs off on behalf of the Crown, and he is the highest authority. It doesn't matter what you want. We voted in 1999 to retain our system, the Crown system. Why? Because we wanted it. It's whereas the people, not whereas politicians or political parties or self-interested groups who want to control this country. It's not your business. Not your business. The Constitution is very, very, very clear. We, the people, joined together in one indissoluble federation of the Commonwealth of Australia. We, the people. Not we, the politicians, we interested parties or any other clown. Not the Freemasons, Fabians, Druids, Buffaloes, whatever, Zionists, whatever they want to be. Who cares? You have no authority. We joined together. And it was representatives of us who went about putting together the Constitution drafts. It was taken to England by Sir Edmund Barton and others. It came back an enabling act which enabled us to have a constitution pursuant to that act. That act restrains our parliaments. Why? Because we voted it to be our constitution. And it seals and locks in the parliament. It can only pass laws pursuant to the constitution. Interpretation of the Constitution is open to the High Court and any court of competent jurisdiction. We don't have it. We haven't had a High Court since 1979 when they produced the High Court of Australia Act. There's no more separation of powers, so the High Court doesn't exist. There it creates huge problems. When you added another form of governance over us, and you try to lie your way into all these things and say, we have this power, we have none, and then Toomey will tell you, we had a local government prior to Federation. Yes, we did. What was it? Each colony had a government. That was the local government representing England. It didn't represent anything, any group in Australia. It represented each individual colony and answered to England under imperial law. So those imperial laws transferred over into Federation under the Act of Settlement, the Colonial Laws Validity Act, and so on, because we are a colony of England. Office, St George's Terrace, Perth, right across the road from Supreme Court Gardens. Don't believe me, it's there. We had people photograph it for us, so I've read it, I know what it says, and I'll tell you now, we went into Federation like everybody else. So we had Federation. The Constitution, which is this one, the Act, was proclaimed and gazetted. Between the 9th of July 1900 and this came into part, there was no states. There was no colonies. There was no Australasian Council. Clause 7 took it all out. But the states did not exist then. And I didn't just say they existed, I said there was none. Because they didn't go from colonies straight to states. They did that when this became proclaimed and gazetted as our Constitution. That's when it took place. Not before. So when in Glue versus the Greenwich Shire, the three quorums, because they're not judges, they're quorums, and the documents say that. I've got all the transcripts of every one of my cases, and certain people named Sudi and whatever said I've lost all these cases. I didn't lose a case that wasn't judged lawfully. Wake up to yourself, look at them, who on them, quorums. Now, in Western Australia, HCA 48, 1996, McGinty put what was ruled in the court as fact to the High Court, and they rejected it in 1996, by the way, not 98. And in 2006 was when the case went before the court. So what happened then, the three quorums lied. They can't say they didn't know, because it was a Western Australian case. They would have been made aware of it, and it applied right across Australia. How do we know that? The Constitution says decisions of the High Court, once published, form part of the common law and are binding on the courts, judges and the people of every state. Lipaha versus the Queen, 1999, a Western Australian case. Henry Lipaha filed against the government into the High Court, and they said exactly what I'm saying, except they said decisions of the High Court, although they have binding force on the courts, inferior courts they come from, they do not form part of the common law. They don't set a precedent. There's no precedent if it's not common law. Doesn't matter what they say, it doesn't. It doesn't prohibit the judges dealing with other cases on similar lines to look at the laws and acts used by that particular judge to say, well, I agree, so I'm going to rule this way. But he's not bound by law to that because it doesn't form part of the common law. Then it says, however, in Lipaha, decisions of the High Court, once published, form part of the common law, and they're binding on the courts, judges and people of every state. So the people that are badly chucking around the idea that each decision of the High Court is relevant only to that state, they're lying to themselves and lying to the people, simply because they don't know or couldn't be bothered finding out. If they say they're not lying, read your Constitution, read decisions of the High Court, you're lying. Now if you go to page 791, the last paragraph, it says, not only the High Court, but every court of competent jurisdiction can declare a law of the Commonwealth or the state to be invalid by transgressing the Constitution. That is a duty cast upon the court by its very judicial function. A duty cast on the court, ordered on the court. Its judicial function. If you look at high treason and fraud in the Supreme Court of Western Australia, a video that was taken of a case I did, the judges did exactly that. Ignored decisions of the High Court. Why? Because it sat in fraud. It wasn't me who yelled out, arrest that judge. It was a barrister sitting in the court. He had every right to. And that was the first time that the police who were waiting outside knew exactly what my appointment as a Commonwealth public official was, and agreed, and gave me his card and said, if you need me, give me a ring. I know what that card means. I know what your appointment is. It's not in Australia, it's in England. He came from England. He was fully aware of it. Is it applicable? Yes. I'm not saying anything that I don't believe in or know to be the truth. I'm only telling the truth so that people will understand, and people who mislead and deceive and form total delusions on the people of this country, trying to make out that they have total control when they absolutely do not. Do not. No. Wake up. You are not getting away with it. People are waking up to the fact that you are liars, you are frauds, and you know it. And Mr. Rennick, I'm not calling you a liar and a fraud. I'm saying what you said is incorrect. Correct it and get out of our parliament. You are not a senator. The Constitution says so. We have never had a lawful federal parliament, so nothing they've ever passed is valid. So there goes your Australia Act. Now, in answer to Anne Toomey again, in relation to local government, there is nowhere in the Constitution that gives authority to any government over land. The 1923 case was against the New South Wales versus the Commonwealth, the people, to get permission to tax land. And the High Court said no, because of the definition of fee simple, which stands. That was reiterated in Fijo versus the Northern Territory. Justice Kirby made it clear, and he referred back to that case to clarify it for anybody who can't be bothered reading. It's there. Get it, read it, and weep. Now, we, the people, which is a very important thing the people have had a guts full of, is they're told our pension is a charity. No, it's not. In 1941, January the 1st, 1946 rather, January the 1st, it was put into law, unfortunately by a fraudulent federal parliament, that they would take 7.5% tax from our wages to pay for our pension. Pay for our pension. That's not charity, you're paying for it. Keating stole it and built the new Parliament House out of it, and now it's been shifted in a futures fund for public servants. What's a public servant? Someone who serves the public. Do we have any of them? No. So what's it there for? To conceal in an unlawful bank account for the politicians so they can dip into it whenever they want? That's the truth. You can't tax people's wages unless there's a specific tax for it. If the people are sovereign and supreme, and that's correct, absolutely, the Parliament becomes subservient to the people. House of Representatives, what does that tell you? They represent the people. The Senate is there to make sure they do. Is it doing its job? No. Are they representing us? No. They got an opposition to the will of the people. That's nuts. Even a raving lunatic could work out that you're lying. You're lying. How can you represent people? Oh, that's to keep them honest. No, if they represented the whole state and only represented the state at a federal level, they would be honest anyway. They would represent the whole state. The whole idea is so everybody who sits in a state parliament represents everybody. Everybody who represents the federal parliament, after they leave the state, after they've been elected, goes to Canberra and they represent Western Australia as a whole without any boundaries. That was the idea of removing the Boundaries Act. That was to remove it so that there were no electoral boundaries. Along comes the federal parliament and they read the piece that says, until the parliament otherwise provides. Well, we haven't got a parliament to provide, haven't had since Federation, and until that's rectified, we can't do anything. How can you fix it? Elect lawful governors. Put the state constitutions back in place per their letters patents, in their original texts, not in the butchered ones. Western Australia's Constitution Alteration Act is it's unlawful and it's invalid. It's garbage. End of the story. If I'm wrong, tell me. Show me. Because I'm not. It ceased to exist under Clause 7 of the Constitution, on the proclamation of this Constitution. All laws did. Read Section 51, subsection 38 in the annotated Constitution. Explains how. Was there any authority granted to the federal parliament to create the Australia Act by that? No. We can go and teach you no. And Anne Toomey says the green and red constitutions are the same. That's a nonsense. Absolute dribble. I've got both. They're different. Both of them are entirely different on the interpretation. Now, Anthony, they won't do that. They love the... Stop. Oh, anyway, don't worry about what's said. I don't care. They don't exist in law. We exist in law. We the people. And as I said, and I'll reiterate that fact because I'm not going to do a huge big video, just explain, when you go to that election, take a letter. I am here, I and your name, am here to vote. I come here under the authority of the Commonwealth Constitution to vote. There are no candidates in this booth that comply with Chapter 1 of the Constitution. None. Not one. Therefore, I am here to vote. I can't vote. It is now on your head, and sign it and date it. Put those words in and walk out. Because you've voted, you've gone there to vote, they've refused to allow you. It is then on their heads. They have not produced lawful candidates. Political parties can't put lawful candidates up for election. I don't care if Rob Sudi and his free man delusion thinks you can, you can't. It's whereas the people joined. We, the people, decided. We, the people, own the Constitution, derived from the Act which grants us the right to have a Constitution. You can tell all the lies you like, but that's how it is. So, Mr. Rennick, if you get upset at what I say, sorry, read your Constitution. 42 says you swear the oath. You don't want to, get out. You're not a senator. You're not a senator. If you breach the oath of allegiance you owe to the people, that's treason. Commonwealth Criminal Code, read it. To conceal that fact is misprision of treason, concealing treason. And there are penalties for committing treason, 25 years imprisonment under that act. So the person the other day who said there's no penalty for treason, that's incorrect as well. So what I want you to do is think what I'm saying, look at what I'm saying, forget Albanese. If he calls a new election, walk in there and hand your piece of paper in and say, I'm here to vote. Where's the candidates? None of those people they put up are selected by the governor to a pool of people, which is the only lawful way you can select your representative for Parliament. And you can't do it because they're not there. Preferential voting, where you've got to vote for 8 on this and 20 on this and the political parties above the line for the Senate, that's treason. It's against the Constitution. It's against the oath you are required to make to the people. So you've breached that oath. 1, by not taking it, and 2, by trying to force us into a gerrymander where the political parties claim to have rights and they have none. Absolutely none. So the delusion, Rob Sudi, is the delusion that we're bound by the political parties to do what they say. That is an absolute delusion of lies. Please get a microphone. This is essential to hear and comprehend. Well, I understand what you're saying. We have the speakers on absolute maximum, using them for a microphone. We'll look into a microphone because the power on the internet has been going up and down for weeks and makes it difficult for everybody. We will correct that, and before the election I'm going to talk again on this letter. So if you play this back, get the idea of the letter, fill it out and serve it. Is that lawful? Yes. You go to court, you hand them a copy of that letter. And then it's up to the court to prove those candidates were lawful, not you. Page 795 of the Constitution, 4th paragraph. That's chapter 3, section 76, by the way, Ann Toomey. You referred to 76 the other day wrongly. Anyway, let's look at it this way. When you exercise throughout anything, any authority through the Commonwealth, you are required to state where in the Commonwealth it comes from. You can't do that. And you can't do it. Okay, so I'll leave it there. Have a long think. Write down the letter, look at it, see what it says. It gives you freedom. Freedom to vote according to the Constitution, not to the restriction and gerrymander and delusion created by the political parties. It is a delusion. There is no election, state or federal, until it's put back. And as for you, Roger Cook, the state that you're sitting under is a delusion in itself. It's not recognised by the Constitution, and you and all your political party and all the others that have done nothing about it have condoned blatant treason against the people. That state does not exist. The state of Western Australia, created by the Constitution, does. The entity known as the state doesn't. Peter Foss told you he was the so-called opposition Attorney General. This is going to come and bite you back on your arse. His words in the Parliament. It's bitten you on the butt. You are a filthy, lying little traitor, and you know it. And you are not going to get what you want. You comprehend that? You're going to jail for a long, long time. So you have a nice day. Thank you very much.